Most people will never admit this out loud. But there's something you do, quietly, privately, sometimes in the middle of the night, that the people around you don't quite understand. Maybe they laugh at it. Maybe they just go quiet. Maybe they stopped asking you about it a long time ago. And somewhere along the way, you started wondering, is something wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. In fact, what I'm about to tell you might be the most clarifying thing you've heard in a long time. There are certain habits, small, almost invisible ones, that only a very specific type of mind carries. Not the loudest person in the room. Not the most confident. Not the one with the most followers or the best answers at dinner. The quiet one. The one who thinks twice before speaking. The one who feels things a little too deeply and has learned to hide it well. If that sounds familiar, stay with me. Because what looks like loneliness from the outside is actually something far more rare. Let's start with the first thing. You think in silence, and you actually enjoy it. Not the silence that comes from having nothing to say. The other kind. The silence you choose. The kind where you sit with a question for days, sometimes weeks, turning it over like a stone in your hand, looking for the part that hasn't been seen yet. Most people are terrified of that silence. They fill it with noise, notifications, conversations, background music, anything that keeps the mind from settling. Because when the mind settles, things come up. And most people aren't ready for what comes up. But you go there on purpose. Maybe you don't even have a word for it. You just know that some of your best thinking happens when no one else is around. When the apartment is quiet. When the drive is long. When everyone else has gone to sleep and there's finally space. That's not antisocial behavior. That's not a flaw in your personality. That is a mind that has learned to trust itself. Think about it. In a world that rewards reaction, you've somehow held on to the ability to reflect. That's not common. That's not something an algorithm can teach you. It's not something you pick up at a networking event or a group chat. It's rare. Genuinely rare. And the strange part? The people who think the deepest are usually the last ones to believe it about themselves. They assume everyone thinks this way. They don't. Most minds skim the surface. Yours keeps going down. The second thing is this. You reread things. You rewatch things. You go back. Not because you didn't understand it the first time, but because something in you knew there was more. A line in a book you underlined 3 years ago suddenly means something completely different today. A conversation you had last month keeps replaying, not because it hurt you, but because there's a layer in it you haven't fully unpacked yet. Other people consume and move on. You consume, sit with it, and return. That's not obsession. That's depth of processing. Your brain doesn't just file information away, it keeps working on it. Quietly. In the background. Like it's running a program you didn't consciously start. And here's the thing about that, it means you're rarely bored by ideas. You can sit with the same concept for years and still find new angles. Most people need constant novelty. You can find novelty inside the familiar. That is an extraordinary quality. And most people in your life probably have no idea you do this. Now the third thing. And this one might sting a little. You notice things you're not supposed to notice. The shift in someone's tone when they're pretending to be fine. The inconsistency in a story someone tells with too much confidence. The moment in a room when the energy changes and no one else seems to catch it. You see it. You always see it. And most of the time, you say nothing. Because you've learned, sometimes the hard way, that pointing it out doesn't help. People don't want to be seen that clearly. It makes them uncomfortable. And so you carry what you notice, alone, like a quiet weight no one else can feel. That's not paranoia. That's pattern recognition at a level most people simply don't operate on. The world calls it sensitivity. But sensitivity and intelligence, at their roots, are the same thing, the ability to pick up signals others miss. The fourth thing. You ask questions that make people pause. Not to show off. Not to dominate a conversation. You ask because you genuinely don't understand how everyone else seems so settled. so certain, so comfortable with the surface-level answer. You're the one who hears an explanation and immediately thinks, but why, though? And what happens when that assumption breaks down? You've probably been told, at some point in your life, that you think too much. Maybe by a parent, a teacher, a friend who just wanted to enjoy the evening without going 3 layers deep into a conversation about why people make the choices they make. And for a while, maybe you tried to stop. You kept the questions inside. You nodded along. You learned to wear the face of someone who's satisfied with simple answers. But the questions never stopped coming. They just went quieter. More internal. More yours. Here's what no one tells you about that quality. The people who built things, real things, lasting things, were almost always the ones who refused to accept the first answer. Not because they were difficult, but because they could feel, somewhere underneath the explanation, that there was something truer waiting. Socrates didn't have a degree. He had questions. Uncomfortable, persistent, maddening questions that made the most educated men in Athens look up from their certainty and suddenly feel unsure of everything they thought they knew. The world didn't celebrate him for it. Not while he was alive. But the questions outlasted everything else. Your questions are like that. Maybe not on that scale, most of ours aren't. But the instinct is the same. The refusal to stop at the surface. The almost involuntary need to go further, deeper, until something finally clicks and feels true. That click, that moment, is something a lot of people never feel. Not because they're not capable, but because they stopped asking before they got there. You haven't stopped. And that matters more than you probably realize right now. Because the world doesn't need more people with fast answers. It needs more people who can sit inside a difficult question long enough to find the real one hiding beneath it. That's you. That has always been you. The 5th thing. You spend time alone, and you actually use it. Not just rest. Not just scrolling until your eyes go heavy. Real time. Time where something in you is working, processing, becoming. Time that looks like nothing from the outside but feels like everything on the inside. You've probably struggled to explain this to people who don't do it. They see you alone on a Friday night and they assume something went wrong. They ask if you're okay. They suggest you come out, be social, stop isolating yourself. And you smile and say you're fine. Because explaining it would take longer than the conversation allows. The truth is, that time alone is where you build yourself. It's not absence. It's construction. Every hour you spend sitting with your own thoughts, questioning your own assumptions, reading something that challenges you, writing something you'll never show anyone, that's an hour you're investing in a version of yourself most people will never take the time to become. There's a kind of loneliness that comes with this. I won't pretend there isn't. Because when you've spent years going deep, alone, quietly, without applause, and you look around at a world that seems to reward the loud and the fast and the certain, it can feel like you've been playing the wrong game. Like everyone else got a manual you never received. Like the thing that makes you is also the thing that keeps you slightly outside of every room you walk into. That feeling is real. I'm not going to talk you out of it. But here's what I want you to hold alongside it. The people who shape the way you think, the writers, the thinkers, the builders, the ones whose words found you at exactly the right moment, almost every single one of them felt exactly what you're feeling right now. Not as a phase. Not as something they grew out of. As a condition of seeing clearly in a world that moves too fast to look. James Baldwin wrote from exile. Nikola Tesla died alone in a hotel room. Kafka asked his closest friend to burn everything he ever wrote. And yet, their solitude became something that outlived them. Something that reached across decades and found you, sitting alone, late at night, in a world they never could have imagined, and made you feel, for a moment, less alone. That's what depth does. That's what this kind of intelligence does. It doesn't always win in the short term. But it lasts. And in a world obsessed with what's happening right now, lasting is the rarest thing of all. Let me tell you something that took me a long time to understand. Intelligence, real intelligence, not the kind measured in tests or displayed in credentials, is almost always uncomfortable to carry. Not because it's a burden in a dramatic sense, but because it creates a gap. A gap between the way you see things and the way things are being presented to you. Between what you know and what you're being told to accept. Between who you are and who the world keeps insisting you should be. And that gap? It never fully closes. You learn to live with it. You learn to find people who feel it too, and when you find them, you recognize each other immediately, without much explanation needed. A certain look. A certain kind of question. A certain willingness to sit inside uncertainty without needing to resolve it too quickly. Those people become your people. Not many of them, but the right ones. But here's the part that most conversations about intelligence never reach. The gap I'm describing, that space between you and the surface of things, is not just a source of discomfort. It's a source of creation. Every meaningful thing that has ever been built, written, composed, designed, or discovered came from someone who could not make peace with how things were. Someone who felt the gap so intensely that they had no choice but to try to close it, not by lowering their vision, but by raising the reality around them. That restlessness you feel? That low hum of there has to be something more that never quite goes away? That is not a malfunction. That is the engine. Most people spend their entire lives trying to quiet that engine. Trying to fit. Trying to want what everyone around them seems to want. Trying to find satisfaction in things that almost satisfy them, but not quite. Never quite. And it works, sometimes. For a while. But the engine doesn't stop. It just goes underground. And underground, it doesn't build anything. It just burns. The difference between someone who carries this kind of mind and flourishes, and someone who carries it and suffers, is almost never talent. It's almost never opportunity. It's whether they made peace with the engine. Not silenced it. Not surrendered to it. Made peace with it. Understood that the restlessness is information. That the discomfort is directional. That the gap is not a wound, it's a map. You've been reading the map your whole life. Maybe you didn't know that's what it was. Maybe it just felt like anxiety, or overthinking, or being too much, or not enough. But look at where it's brought you. Here. Still asking. Still going deeper. Still refusing to settle for the version of yourself that would have been easier to become. That's not nothing. That's everything. Before I take you into the final part of this conversation, I have to stop for just a second. If you've made it this far with me, you already know this isn't a typical video. No hacks. No shortcuts. No list that promises to change your life by Thursday. Just an honest conversation about a kind of mind that doesn't always get spoken about directly. And if that's the kind of content that means something to you, I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel. Because this is what we do here, every single day. We go deep. We take the things that most people feel but can't quite name, and we sit with them long enough to say something true. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. And bring someone with you, someone in your life who thinks too much, feels too deeply, and has been told that's a problem. It's not a problem. And they need to hear that. Now, here's the thing about everything we've talked about today. All 5 of these habits. The silence. The depth. The noticing. The questions. The solitude. None of them exist in isolation. They're not 5 separate traits. They're 5 expressions of the same underlying truth, that your mind was built for something that the noise of daily life keeps interrupting. And the most dangerous moment for someone like you isn't failure. It's not rejection. It's not being misunderstood. The most dangerous moment is comfort. Because comfort, real comfort, the kind that settles in slowly, the kind that feels like finally, is where the engine goes quiet for the wrong reasons. Not peace. Not resolution. Just fatigue. The moment when the questions get too heavy and you decide, almost without noticing, to just stop asking. To take the job that's fine. To stay in the relationship that's almost right. To keep the version of yourself that's easier to explain at dinner. I've seen it happen. Maybe you have too. Brilliant people, people with that particular quality of mind we've been talking about, who one day just settled. Not because they wanted to, but because they got tired of the gap. And the gap didn't close when they settled. It just stopped being useful. That's the warning inside everything I've said today. The gift is real. The rarity is real. But it requires something from you in return. Not performance. Not productivity. Not constant output. Just honesty. The willingness to keep asking, even when the asking is inconvenient. To keep noticing, even when the noticing is lonely. To keep sitting in the silence, even when the noise feels easier. Because the world doesn't need a quieter version of you. It needs the full one. Here's what I want to leave you with. Everything we've talked about today, the silence, the depth, the questions, the solitude, the noticing, none of it makes you better than anyone else. But it does make you responsible. Responsible for what you do with a mind that was built to go further. Responsible for what you build in the hours others spend consuming. Responsible for the questions you carry, not just for yourself, but for the people around you who don't yet have the words for what they're feeling. That's the weight of this kind of intelligence. Not the weight of superiority. The weight of stewardship. You didn't choose to think this way. You didn't wake up one day and decide to feel things at this depth, to notice what others miss, to sit inside questions that most people walk past without blinking. It chose you. And the only real question, the one underneath everything else we've talked about today, is what you're going to do with it. Not tomorrow. Not when the conditions are perfect. Not when you finally feel ready. Now. With what you have. From where you are. Because here's the quiet truth that this whole conversation has been building toward. The world doesn't remember the people who had the most potential. It remembers the ones who used it. Not perfectly. Not loudly. Not without doubt or fear or the very real possibility of being wrong. Just consistently. Just honestly. Just with the willingness to keep going when the easier thing would have been to stop. That's all it ever takes. That's all it has ever taken. There's a verse that has stayed with me through this whole conversation. Romans 12 verse 2. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That's not a religious instruction. That's a description of exactly what we've been talking about. The renewing of the mind. The refusal to conform to the surface. The quiet, daily, unglamorous work of thinking differently and living accordingly. You've been doing that work. Keep doing it. If this conversation meant something to you, hit that subscribe button. Share this video with 5 people who need to hear it. Not the ones who will immediately agree. The ones who will sit with it for 3 days and come back changed. Those are your people. And leave me a comment, not just a reaction. Tell me something true. Tell me what landed. Tell me what you're still thinking about. And tell me what you want us to talk about next. Because this channel goes where the real questions are. And I have a feeling you know exactly where that is. Thank you for staying. See you in the next one.